Hey everyone, so we are going to take a look here. This is a deck I am presenting in this week's article. It's going to be titled JunkPost. That is the name of the deck, and that is the name of the article. Basically, I'm taking a look at the interactions of Cloud Posts and the Locust lands, and many deck lists there. Every post deck that is currently seen play, showed in the money, etc. And this is one that I put together, just describing the fact that you can use almost anything into a shell of a post deck and basically be successful for it. We've seen Is It Post, we've seen Demir Post, things like that have managed to get some success, and this was my attempt at putting together a deck that is basically a Grull Post deck, red and green. This was kind of inspired, I guess, the whole thing by the recent showing of a deck that was just mono red post. So we're going to take a look here, and this was kind of a combination between red and green. I loved the fact that green post has such big creatures, and this was saying, hey, why don't we combine the fact that you get these big creatures in green with the burn abilities that we get in red. Is It Post looks for Rolling Thunder to be its big finisher, and even a couple of Demir Post decks have run Rolling Thunder as the finisher. So, to me that says, hey, we can use green, we can get these big creatures, and at the same time we can, run Rolling Thunder without having to completely rely on something like the Prophetic Prisms to fetch us red land. So, we sat down and, with the mana base is pretty self-explanatory. Of course, going to run the 8 post lands, and then you have to run, well, you don't have to, but it's a good idea when not playing blue to run at least 2 of these Ravnica bounce dual, whatever you want to call these lands, because this gives us an opportunity to recur Glimmer Post. When you run blue with the post decks, you have access to Capsize, and you can use that to replay Glimmer Posts and gain life. But, not being in blue, we needed some other options, so that's where these Gruul Turf come into play. Next up on the block is, obviously the Ulamog's Crusher. This is kind of a staple card for any post deck is going to be running at least 2, if not 4 of these creatures. They are just one of the biggest, nastiest creatures that we have available to us in Pauper, and the 8 mana cost is not very detrimental because of the Cloud Posts. Now, in order to kind of ramp up to these, we are going to be using a full set of Expedition maps. This gives us a lot of opportunities to we fetch out the post lands as necessary, or as you'll see in one of the example games, fetch out the Gruul's Turf, or even any of the colors if necessary. You can tell this deck is very heavy on the green side of the post, merely splashing red, but that's okay. We're going to also be running a full set of Overgrown Battlement. This is not only good as, a mana creature, but it also works as a nice early game wall for the aggro matchups. And the more you have on the field, the more it taps for. Now, Green Post runs other things like Wall of Roots to help increase the mana generated off these. However, I didn't want to go that route. I thought that it was a bit unnecessary. You can go overkill in mana, and having lots of mana is fantastic, but I don't want to get so flooded that I have all this mana and nothing to play. So I didn't want to, kind of waste space with an additional 4 walls. Next up is Reap and Sow. This is a fantastic card. It's used because you have the ability to... I actually did have someone ask me why you would use Reap and Sow over something like the Acid Moss. And to me it's pretty simple. What you get with Acid Moss is it destroys a land and fetches for only 4 mana, and you're like, oh, that's great. However, it has the stipulation that the land it fetches is only going to be a forest. When you use Reap and Sow, it is going to cost you additional mana, only 2 though, which is easily attainable in a post deck, and it allows you to, fetch out any non-basic land. It's not even the Acid Moss, it's not even a fact that it just gets a basic land. It's really held back by the fact that it is specific to a forest. Reap and Sow is definitely a superior option. It gives you this main deck land destruction, which gives you an advantage in other post matchups. If you're playing against Is It Post or Demir Post with a deck that's running the Reap and Sow, it gives you the advantage because you have the main deck land destruction. And at the same time, for the additional 1 in a green, you have the ability to not only do that, but you can fetch out another post land as well. So we're definitely going to run a full set of those. Now, as far as our creature base, I am keeping with the Fierce Empaths. I only ran 3 of these because it was mostly a space decision instead of running the 4, but, you can make some changes, and we'll talk about that in a second. Brought in the Fanger and Marauders, but I kind of wanted these to be a little bit more important to this deck. I kind of set this up where you get a lot of life gain off Glimmer Post, but I wanted to actually put these Marauders to a much better use. They're a nice sized creature for 6 mana, and whenever an artifact goes to the grave, they gain you 5 life. So I kind of wanted to play off that, and the expedition maps will trigger this and fetch you land. The other thing that I put in was this combo here. This is one that I've seen a lot in Red Deck Wins and other casual decks. Things with where you don't have access to card draw that is so nice through blue mana. It uses Ichor Wellspring, and when this comes into play, you draw a card, and when it goes to the graveyard, you get to draw an additional card as well. So what you do is you use that in addition to something like this, the Rebirths here. You sacrifice an artifact in addition to the 1 red mana, and it puts 3 1/1 goblin tokens into play. Now, these aren't necessarily going to be a big impact on your deck because of their small size, but it does give you a great early game play with the turn 2 Wellspring into the Rebirth, and netting you 3 goblin tokens, which will help you at least shore up against aggro. It stalls for time until you can get some of your bigger creatures out there. Or it trades with little things. It stops Delvers from attacking before they flip. Just little things. It's chump blockers, whatever, are necessary for the deck. And it's a great draw engine. We don't have a lot of options available to us because we are not running blue. When you have the green post deck, it generates kind of an implied card advantage through the Auroch herds, because those herds, when they come into play, allow you to search for another card with the same name. So you basically are putting the Auroch herd into play, and it's still staying in your hand, and at the same time it's thinning out your deck. So that's what we call implied card advantage. This deck is not using that, but you have to find some way to get that card advantage going. So what I'm doing with this deck is I'm using the Wellsprings as my kind of additional card advantage. We're also using the Prisms. The Prisms are a nice little cantrip. They help us shore out the mana base, which is great, and we're only running a few red spells, no more than a double red cost in the Rolling Thunder, but we're only running 2 mountains as well as the 2 turfs, so getting these Prisms are kind of important when it comes to getting that mana. Most of the time, though, I am willing to sacrifice those for a Rebirth if necessary. Let's see, what else have I not talked about here? The Shamblers. Wanted another big creature, like I said. I wasn't personally bringing in the Auroch's herd. So I brought in the Shamblers because they do provide you some utility. Kicking this creature and playing it for 4 and 2 green is not that big a deal when you are playing the post lands. So having this ability to destroy a non-creature permanent is great. It kind of interacts well with Reap and Sow because it gives you another option for land destruction, and it gives you option for stopping any kind of enchantments or artifacts that you may find yourself. Mostly Bone Splitters are what you're going to kill with that, in my experience. But I think it's a great thing to run in there. Talk about Rolling Thunder. It's going to be the big finisher. You can run Keravik's Torch. It works just as well. I kind of like Rolling Thunder because it gives you an easy opportunity to split the damage. So it can act as not only a finisher for your opponent, but it gives you options when you come into an aggro situation. You can split it amongst a whole bunch of weenies and kill them all off. So the last thing I guess that leaves is Swirling Sandstorm. Anyone who caught my video or article when I talked about the Tilling Thunder deck, I kind of talked about Swirling Sandstorm there. This is a great spell. I think it's a lot of fun. Does 5 damage to each creature without flying if you have Threshold, and if you do not have Threshold, then it does nothing. It's just a dead card in your hand. So I really kind of like the flavor of that card, but I had originally had some other options in there, like Moment's Peace, stuff like that. I wanted something to help kill off, creature base. If you find yourself against the weenies, against the aggro, you need some kind of answer. And this is what I decided to go with to try out. It worked in several cases. I really like the fact that it does 5 damage, as opposed to the usual 1 or 2 that you find in Pauper, for mass damage. Now, in order to kind of shore up the fact that this needs threshold, I did bring in 3 copies of Evolving Wilds. Evolving Wilds Terramorphic Expanse, not usually something you find in the Izzet decks. Occasionally you will see it, but most of the time they don't run that because you're already running stuff like Cloudpost, which comes into play tapped. So adding yourself yet another land that comes into play tapped is going to only inhibit you when trying to make those plays, especially in the Izzet Post deck where you're a control player. You want to have that mana available to play counter spells and stuff like that at instant speed, and Evolving Wilds doesn't do that. But we're playing a more aggro-based deck, so it's not so critical to us to have that come into play tapped. And more importantly, we kind of needed extra stuff to go to the graveyard for the Sandstorms. And Evolving Wilds provides us with at least a simple answer to that. We do get stuff with, Wellspring, and the Rebirth will immediately put 2 cards into your graveyard. The maps get sacrificed to go into your graveyard as well, but, just every little bit helps to kind of build up towards that. Now I did want to, provide some options, getting back to my roots here where I used to show you a deck and then provide you with options for, cards that you may want to change, you may not have, stuff like that. You dislike my choice. The first thing that I address in the article is definitely this combo here with the Wellspring and the Rebirth. This is just kind of definitely a casual combo. It's definitely a lot of fun. It's part of why I call this junk post. Because there is some just absolute junk in here like those in the Sandstorm, but it's a lot of fun to me sometimes to bring junk into a deck and make it work. So you can definitely take those out. Go maybe a bit more on the creature base. I did play, I will spoiler alert here, example game 3, I do play another person who was running a red and green Cloudpost deck. And he was using, actually, he brought the herds, the Auroch herds into that deck. So you can just as easily take out these 4 cards, and that leaves you room for 4 herds. If you go for a more heavier creature route, maybe you bring in a 3rd Shambler. You could bring in a single Crozen Tusker maybe to help you fetch out the mountains that you need, and a little bit of card draw off that. Losing out with the Wellsprings. But if you do bring in these extra creatures, definitely you want to probably bring in the 4th Fierce Empath, because that will, that tutor ability is great. We were talking about implied card advantage, and that's definitely a way to do it. Oops, sorry about that. Let's get him out of there. I keep saying this in my videos that I have to turn off my messenger, and here I am leaving it all up. Anyways, so we have this ability available to us to create that implied card advantage through tutors and stuff like that. And if you're going a heavier creature base, you definitely want to be able to do that. Another thing that you might want to get rid of the Sandstorms. I have these in here, like I said, in order to kind of shore up against aggro. This deck does take a little while to get online at some point in time, because you're trying to build up. Once you get the Cloudposts, you're good. 3 or 4 of those onto the battlefield, and then your mana is set and you're good to go. But before you get to that point, a really fast aggro deck, something like Goblins, or mono white aggro, mono black control, stuff like that, will be able to definitely get an advantage on you. So you kind of wanted something to balance that out. And like I said, I had tried stuff like Moment's Peace. I think Moment's Peace is a decent option if you're looking for a simple kind of fog effect, because it does have the flashback ability. So again, we're generating that implied card advantage, because if you replace these with 2 copies of Moment's Peace, what you're getting is 4 spells in 2 cards, and that's kind of what the advantage is going to be to you, because of that flashback ability. So yeah, that's one option. Another thing you can do is bring in a 3rd Rolling Thunder. Like I said, I like these over Torch because of the fact that you can split it up. But if you do that, you might want to definitely increase your mountain count from 2 up to at least 3. You do have options to fetch it out with the expedition maps as well, but that's not necessarily going to happen. You really don't want to be using these. You can absolutely use these to fetch out stuff like a basic land, but it's not your ideal situation. You want to be using those for the posts. The next thing that you want to be able to do is probably get rid of these Evolving Wilds. Like I just said, I brought these in to kind of shore up the fact that we can reach the threshold with the Sandstorms. But if you get rid of the Sandstorms, there's not really a need for Evolving Wilds. You pull those out, maybe increase the mountain count, and you should be pretty good getting around that mana curve without having to have the fetch land that will prevent you from being able sorry, it'll keep you from having to wait another turn to be able to use that mana, because you'll replace these with basics. Even if you say took one out to make it a mountain and then replace the other two with a singleton of the cycling lands of each color. I like doing something like that personally. But yeah, that gives you some options for changes you can make. Really, just check out the article, and the basic point here is the fact that the post lands are so. I hate to say overpowered, because I've had a lot of fun, like guilty fun, playing with post decks over the past week or so. But it's definitely a strong thing with this mana that it can generate, and it allows you to play with just almost anything. So definitely check that out. And article, example games, enjoy it all. Like I said, if you want any post list that is currently won a DE, you will find it in that article. I've also made some changes to how I lay out my competitive stuff if you want to go check out the current past the metagame, etc., etc. And there's some big stuff in the works, so definitely go check it out, and I will catch you all later.